If you were listening to Steve Mills on Breakfast this morning, you would have heard him talking to a lawyer who's involved in a class action now being taken on behalf of flight attendants and cabin cleaners who have been exposed to in-flight insecticides. What they're saying is that there's an established link these days to Parkinson's disease. Certainly one of the cabin crew who's involved in this has Parkinson's symptoms, which he's taking back to those sprays, which of course were routinely sprayed on us when we were returning from overseas flights. I don't know if they're still continuing. That's about to be established with Tony Sheldon. Tony's the National Secretary of the Transport Workers Union. They've bought into this today as well. G'day, Tony.
Good afternoon, Paul.
Mate, are these sprays still used? I've got a memory that I was actually sprayed on a flight, I reckon, within the last 2 years.
Well, the different companies operate different ways, and what they do is they either spray before passengers, after passengers get off, or they spray before they, when passengers aren't around, and some when the passengers are there. Because what's happened, quite a few passengers have complained about being sprayed, so they've left the flight attendants and the cleaning staff to be exposed rather than passengers as well. Yeah,
look, this was a flight on an Asian carrier coming back into Australia from Asia, and I reckon it was within the last 2 years, probably 18 months ago, because I was surprised, because it hadn't happened to me on other flights. I've been flying out of Australia routinely with Emirates, and it hasn't been done to me on an Emirates flight, and I was sort of somewhat surprised, thinking, wow, this is still happening.
Yeah, no, the spraying occurs, the requirement for the spraying to occur by the health authorities and by international authorities as part of the routine for appropriate steps to deal with health risks on with insects. But of course, on one hand, we're dealing with that health risk, but then we're exposing, as it appears, both cabin crew being locked in basically in an incubator of potential Parkinson disease, including cleaning staff.
Well, the flight attendants are walking along underneath the mist of spray that they're spraying up, and then yes, I hadn't realised that then the cleaners also clearly would be exposed to this.
Well, Paul, you're right. What's happening is that you've got people not only exposed with the cleaners when it's being sprayed in certain flights and flight attendants when it's being sprayed, but they're all being also exposed to residue within the plane, on seats, on the roof, etc., and in galleys. And this is one of what's certainly clear with the farmers, where investigations have been taking place before about insecticide spraying, that farmers in open fields that are exposed to insecticide spraying also have been found to have a higher incidence of Parkinson's disease. And you look at that situation, then you compare that with people in enclosed spaces, not in the open air, then it becomes clearly certainly a much higher potential health risk, and one that unfortunately health departments and successive governments haven't properly investigated, and regardless of some of the facts that have been coming out regards farmers.
So, Tony, is this a new issue, or is this, you've been in the TWU for a long time, has this come up over the years?
Look, it's been raised in various times, but I think the link that flight attendants and as you rightly said, flight attendants that have now taken cases forward means that it's now more prominent in everyone's mind. People are prepared to say, "Look, I'm prepared to step forward and go through what can be a challenging process of trying to get their cases properly heard, properly dealt with." And most critically here is that it's not about getting compensation. How do you get compensation for a loss of value of life? It's about actually governments recognising and employers recognising that this needs to be properly dealt with, properly looked at, and to reduce potential risk, let alone actual risk to employees on flights.
Yeah, a lot of this exposure will be historic in nature, won't it? And a lot of people who might be dealing with Parkinson's now may not have associated it until this stage with their earlier work, inside cabins of aircraft.
Well, you're absolutely right. It goes back, it's continual exposure. It's over a period of time in isolated areas. sort of chemicals that have been used successfully over years. You think of the sorts of exposure that people have had as flight attendants and cleaners, that there's many people that wouldn't be aware that they may well have now the ongoing symptoms of Parkinson or in the future, because it does take and can take a considerable number of years for it to occur. And I think I'd actually draw the similarities, at least in the sorts of circumstances, and some of the comments from some of the airlines and from the government, like asbestos. Asbestos was a critical part of everything from fire reduction to efficient brakes linings. And people talked about how important asbestos was to the general community, but there was no concern, certainly for many decades, about what the likely potential threat was to people working and families and communities working in the area with asbestos mines and production.
Yeah, look, that story's developed. That story's developed over the life of my career in journalism, and I remember how it started and how dismissively it was treated at the time, and then what an epidemic we ended up with.
That's right, and what's critically important is that suffering and pain that could have been avoided is really the question we're saying to now to this government, and this has been an issue for successive governments, but also to employers, that it's not good enough to say that this is a critical part of the process of dealing with insect risk when people are being exposed and there's factual links to a high degree of Parkinson. It's not good enough to bury your head in the sand and, in this case, bury your head almost in the asbestos pile. This case, it is actually about the government moving forward and doing the right thing, the health authorities in various states.
So you're now asking former flight crew and cabin cleaners to get in touch with the union's national office. I've got a phone number here. That's yes. The message.
That's correct, and I think this is really an important opportunity for people to actually get not only more facts about what's going, but also have an opportunity to raise their concerns that they've actually personally experienced, or friends or loved ones that that have been exposed or are suffering the ill effects of this insecticide.
Good on you, Tony. Good to talk to you. Thanks a lot. I'll give that number out now.
My pleasure, Paul. Thank you very much.
Tony Sheldon, National Secretary of the Transport Workers Union. If you are in that group, former flight crew, cabin cleaners, and you may have been diagnosed with Parkinson's, or you're just unsure of your health status at the moment, I'll give you that phone number. It's a Sydney number, 02 8114 6500, 02 8114 6500.